Just got a minute countdown. We're good to go. Okay, 30 out. $50. Football season is officially here, and what better way to mark the start of NFL, college, and high school football season than by talking about football movies? It's that time of year, the gridiron is here, and football movies are back. Hey everybody, Dragon Movie Guy here. Welcome to another episode of the Dragon Movie Guy podcast. Joining me today is a friend of the channel. It's his second time on Dragon Movie Guy. It is a guest who I'm friends with. He's had me on his podcast. He is Eric Snyder. You know him as Fish. He's the host of the Fat Fish podcast. He is a journalist. He is a journalist who has covered the then Oakland Raiders, the now Las Vegas Raiders. He has his own podcast called the Fat Fish Podcast, where he talks about anything and everything under the sun, including football. And this is a man who I believe has an eidetic photographic memory. So please welcome the man to the channel. This is Fish, a.k.a. Eric Snyder. Welcome to Dragon Movie Guy. Thank you, Fish, for coming to talk football movies.
Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And thanks for coming on. And we have a little bit of an audio mix minus going on, so we'll try and bear with it as much as possible. But the conversation is what is important. So tell me a little bit about who do you think will win the Super Bowl this year, and we'll jump right into your countdown.
Well, I'm boring. I think it's going to be a repeat of last year between Kansas City and Philadelphia, because I think both rosters are very stacked and got better. And until you beat these guys, and definitely Philadelphia is the best roster in the NFC. I know you're a Seattle fan, and I expect the playoffs for you guys also. Kansas City's in a tough conference, and, you know, the Jets are coming. They've gotten better, but I'm going with Kansas City and Philadelphia.
And what do you think makes it for a good football movie? Because there's all kinds of different movies in the football genre. So what do you think it is that makes for a good football movie?
If there's sex in the movie, if there's sex in any kind of movie, then I think that it helps. If there's a good protagonist, and or it's a quarterback that's the kind of guy that's on his motorcycle and goes to the game, wins, and then grabs a cheerleader and takes it to the bungalow and bang, 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 and then he goes back and he's a D student. He gets better grades because of her, and he gets a scholarship to Princeton, and the rest of the world is great. So sex in football movies is great, but the sex for me, what gets me off in a good football movie is the storyline. And we're going to talk about a couple of movies today. Some are based on true stories, but football is the only sport, Brian, I think you'll agree, because we've had this conversation, sir, in the bar, that you don't have the luxury of, okay, we lost 10 in a row. Vince Lombardi, the great coach, 2 great lines. You're only as good as your availability, and your ability is one. The other one was, hey, guys, in baseball, you can start out 0-5, and you have a whole season to make it up. You start out 0-5 in football, and coaches are looking for jobs. Very
true. Very, very true. it's a tough road to hoe as a football coach, but that's part of why we love it. It reflects real life, I think, better than any other sport. There's very little in terms of guaranteed contracts, so it really does reflect as close to a certain reality or real life as possible. So that, as far as and the competition, the action, and you're right, the sex appeal definitely helps to have some eye candy around for sure. So let's go ahead and jump. Oh, and by the way, what can people expect from the Fat Fish podcast?
Well, we're a sports and entertainment podcast, mostly entertainment. My co-host Brad Grunberg's been in 120 films and TV shows, and he's got a nice gig going with Curb Your Enthusiasm once this damn writer's strike is over, an actor's strike. So we hit everything. We have a guest on a week. We've had you on, and our guests range anywhere from, we just had Rod Martin, a Raiders Hall of Famer, and we have actors on, and we have a lot of fun, and we chop it up, and we're loose cannons. So we curse. We're basically the Pat McAfees that aren't the Pat McAfees, so there's a lot of F-bombs going on, but the content we think is consistent.
Absolutely, and it's all about having fun and the conversation. So let's jump right in, shall we? Talk about your number 5 film, which for some reason I don't have up there. Your number 5 film is based on a real life story. Tell me about The Express.
Oh, just a great, this is the Ernie Davis story. There's a kid that came out of Syracuse from a broken family, and not a broken family, but he tried like hell to get into Syracuse. He was a terrific athlete, and he was there was a bidding war between the Redskins and the Browns to get him. And the Redskins owner at the time, Marshall, was a huge racist. And Art Modell, who everyone knows from the Cleveland Brown lineage, really fought to get this kid. And the minute they got him, he was diagnosed with leukemia. And he never played it down for the Cleveland Browns, but they retired his jersey. That's how much he meant to that community. He was a terrific college football player. And it showed how Jim Brown, Jim Brown influenced getting into Syracuse. And the coach, I can't think of the coach's name, but he was played by Dennis Quaid in the movie. It's a tearjerker, and it's a true story. And, it's about a kid that falls in love in college. There's no sex in the movie, none that I could really brag about. But it's a great film, a study. It's a love story between a coach and a young man, and this kid with his wife, and the community and the kid. And it doesn't end great, but the compass of the story ends great.
And this is similar to the Jim Brown story, same college, similar story, but a few years earlier. What should people know about this story about this running back that we don't know? You may or may not know.
Well, he was a number 1 recruited running back out of high school, and he really wanted to go to a school that had a good pedigree for education. At the time, Syracuse was. And Jim Brown was the top, obviously, the guy was playing with the Cleveland Browns at the time. And he went back and he helped recruit him and just mentored him and said, this is what you have to do. Knowing quite well that this kid's going to come into the league. Not only did he come into the league, he came to the same team that Jim Brown was on, which would have made a wonderful 1-2 punch. For you football junkies out there, remember the past, it would have been sort of like the 1972 Miami Dolphins with Larry Zonka, Jim Kick, and Mercury Morris. It would have been that kind of a 1-2 punch with Brown and Ernie Davis. But the kid, unfortunately, got leukemia, and he passed away before he even took one hand off. He put the uniform on in a preseason game. He was so sick, the team took care of all his medical expenses. And the kid never played it down. He was a rookie, but he made such an impact on the organization with his hard work in the preseason. And you knew he was a star. Back then, if you were a top running back coming out of college, you were destined for fame in the NFL. So it's a sad story, but it's a good moral victory for people that fight hard. And his story still it bounds well. The Browns have retired his jersey. Who retires a jersey, Dragon movie guy, Brian? And you never play it down for him. Think about that.
Yeah, very few. I can't think of any off the top of my head. And what do you think of Rob Brown as the role of Ernie Davis?
Terrific. I mean, he's a great actor. He was, and and he nailed it. He nailed it because you had to show compassion, and it wasn't a rah-rah type of movie, and you showed a guy that worked so hard to get to the zenith of the sport, and then unfortunately tragedy took him down, with this insidious C word that comes into so many and envelopes so many people's lives. And the moral of the story was, for all you Browns fans that hate Modell for moving the Browns to Baltimore in 1996, he really is a hero in this film for taking the kid on, paying his salary, and paying his family's salary. The kid he signed like a 4-year contract. He made sure the family got every nickel that he was earned, that kid earned, and he never played.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a moving story, absolutely, and a surprisingly good film. 2008, I believe this came out. 2007 or 8. Yeah, The Express, number 5 on your list. My number 5 is a little bit lighter-hearted. It's a little bit lighter. It's The Waterboy, starring Adam Sandler.
God.
Not quite as serious a tone, but this is, it's Adam Sandler. He plays the water boy of a small college football team. Henry Winkler is his coach, and what can we say? He loves the H2O. It's a film that has Fairuza Balk, it has Rob Schneider, it has a ton of people in it, and there's nothing too non-formulaic about it, but that's part of the appeal. It's a character-driven comedy. We love seeing, this is Adam Sandler at peak Adam Sandler. This is him being in character while still sort of playing a version of himself, or at least a more southern drawled Creole version of himself. He loves the H2O. So therefore it's a ton of fun. It is my number 5 movie. What are your memories of The Waterboy?
I love Henry Winkler. I mean, I thought it was great. Comedians take a shot at him all the time. I think it was Jay Moore that said, "How do you get a 5'6" Jewish guy?" Now we're gonna on woke culture. That's what he is. How do you get him to play the number 1 coolest guy on the planet, Arthur Fonzarelli, in Happy Days? And then he goes and plays this great coach. It's just sometimes you see him on screen, and even though he's a very talented actor, and I hear a great person from my podcast partner Brad that knows that, and sometimes you just laugh. I enjoyed the film. What was his girlfriend's name? What's Faiza? What's the actor's name?
Fairuza Balk.
Yeah,
she was in The Craft.
She's nuts. She's always I remember her in oh God, what's the film with Edward Norton where he plays a skinhead? He was in there for Academy Award.
American something or other.
American History X. She always plays that kind of role of the bad girl, girlfriend of a Nazi. And here she is. And the mother, who was the mother played by in Waterboy?
This is Kathy Bates.
Kathy Bates. Oh God, yeah. Go from misery to that. So I enjoyed the film. I'm an Adam Sandler guy. I like the fact that he puts all his people, like Rob Schneider's in every one of his movies. And
this is the one Rob Schneider's like, you can do it.
Yeah, every film.
Rob Schneider finding at least one little character trait to talk about in his films. So that is my number 5 flick for football. Your number 4 film is where we cross over a little bit. This is Varsity Blues. James Vanderbeek, John Voight. It is Texas high school football, and you know a little something about Texas high school football, or at least Texas football. You went to the University of Texas.
And you know what? I was a journalist, and it's true. Whether you watch Friday Night Lights, which we may talk about, or especially in Varsity Blues, if you play high school football, I don't care where you are, they got huge wooden cutouts of you and your position in front of your house. And just the typical names. All right, how about Paul Walker playing the character Lance Harbor, the All-American quarterback, and Amy Smart is that. Look at I love these films with young actors that Paul Walker's not a star yet. It's one of his first films. who knew? I mean, may he rest in peace. They go on to such fame after that. But Vanderbeek, you're right. Amy Smart. There's a number of young actors in this film. I thought the guy that stole the film was Scott Conn. Did you see the film?
Oh yeah, it's the one on our list that crossovers. So yeah.
Yeah, Scott Conn as Tweeter was great. Of course, John Voight's just a great character actor, and he plays that really pretentious, sycophant, asshole, excuse my language, folks, coach named Bud Kilmer. He's got a statue, and it's his way or the highway. And a little Lance Harper's a star quarterback. He gets injured, and here comes Johnny Moxon, played by Vanderbeek, and he reads Shakespeare, and he's a smart kid, and it's not, but he's a great player, and he of course, typical story, he bashes heads with the coach, and it gets down to the state finals. I won't say what happens, but it's good. I love the film because it had humor, it had there was some solace in it, and it had redemption.
Yeah, absolutely, and John Voight, phenomenal actor, and he's doing a dead-on Barry Switzer impersonation. Like in the 2 or 3 years after Barry Switzer took over the Cowboys, he is channeling Barry Switzer better than anyone I've ever seen. Like, everyone always talks about Johnny Depp channeling Keith Richards in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, but he channels Barry Switzer in a way that for some reason no one ever points out. But he channels Barry Switzer like no other, and plays that great antagonist coach of like, it's my way or the highway kind of guy. And this is also it's number 4 on my list as well. And look, you talked a little bit about sex appeal and the importance of having a little eye candy. This is the film that has Allie Larder in the whipped cream bikini. I mean, how do you get any better than the whipped cream bikini? We haven't seen it since. We didn't see it before.
It reminded me of Fast Times at Ridgemont High because Vanderbeek's character had the same reaction that Mike Radner had in Fast Times when Jennifer Jason Leigh says, "My sister, no one's home tonight. My brother's out. My parents are out of town," and she's in her negligee. And she goes to kiss him. He goes, "I gotta get my mother's car home." Vanderbeek had the same response. I go, "You nuts? Who turns that down?" That is just a wow. You know what? When did that film come out? 2099. What?
1999.
So they didn't have that wasn't Photoshop. They really had whipped cream on her and her lower region too. And I would I'm a sick idiot. I would have loved to have been the boom operator. I would have been like Ricky Jay and Boogie Nights shaking as I'm holding the boom mic.
Who turns it down? Well, you turn it down when you have Amy Smart at home. So, I mean, this full of options for the Dawson, right, as they would say.
The Dawson Creeper.
Yeah, oh god, yeah, he was, and it's sort of an interesting look too at that football culture of high school football in Texas, and the guy that has the talent but not the desire. So that's also kind of one of the other things that I love about Varsity Blues as well. And it's my number 4 movie. Your number 3 movie is, it's probably one of the best critically acclaimed movies on either of our lists. This is Remember the Titans. Denzel Washington is a high school football coach in the 70s. Tell me about Remember the Titans.
Well, 4 of my films are based on true stories. Okay, Varsity Blues is the only fictional story. Remember the Titans is about one of the first the integration of Tennessee football, and Denzel Washington plays the first black coach in basically an all-white high school, very little segregation, and it's bringing the two races together. And it starts out with them taking them to a training camp out of Gettysburg and showing them how to live together and that we're all as one. And I just think about the young actors that came out of that. I think about Kip Pardue was a young actor who played Ronnie Sunshine Bass, from California. But the one actor is in that film that is a superstar now that had a limited role, a few lines, was Ryan Gosling. Ryan Gosling was in that film, and now he's Ken in Barbie, and he had a great role. And just Will Patton, who I always thought, I talked about in the bar, is always a bad guy, but you pointed out he was a good guy in Armageddon. But He's a coach. This is a true story. Herman Boone's the name of the coach. It's the name of Denzel Washington's character. It was a real guy. And he took over for Will Patton's character, who was the coach at the time. And they learned Will Patton's character. That's it's a little bit degrading that, hey, here's a new guy taking my job. I'm a successful coach. And they had to work together in a time when there was racism. And based on the truth, I don't want to give it away, but it's got a great ending. And there's also some heartbreaking stuff in it. It's a true story about what happened to one of the kids on the defensive line. I don't want to give it away, but there's some tragedy in this. And it just shows how people come together I want to say it was the late 60s, early 70s, at a time when civil rights was really an issue.
Well, and this is a story, too, that takes place when schools were still, quote-unquote, separate but equal. It takes place at a time of mandatory busing. So it's in that late 60s, early 70s sort of time frame. And, when you try and have to combine resources and combine situations, of course there's going to be toes that are stepped on. And in this case, it's who I like to call the, Will Patton, a.k.a. the younger-looking Robert Duvall. I don't think Will Patton's ever played a consigliere, though. So, but yeah, no. Denzel Washington, very powerful performance in this role, and I know he's been in other sports movies, but this is probably the one that I think of most when I think of Denzel Washington doing a sports movie. Powerful performances across the board, and even Donald Faison and Wood Harris in the film as well. Wood Harris, of course, from The Wire. So definitely a talented cast all the way up and down. So that is your number 3 movie. My number 3 movie is one with Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner's more famous for doing baseball movies than football movies, and he's not playing in this one. He's in his 60s by this point, but it's Draft Day, comes from 2014. He plays the general manager of the Cleveland Browns in one of the very few films that is endorsed by the NFL in terms of it uses NFL teams, NFL colors, NFL personalities, NFL players, all the way up and down. And the foil for his team is my team, the Seattle Seahawks, general managed by Chi McBride, or actually owned by Chi McBride, or team president, or whoever he is, and Patrick Saint-Esprit, who loves his pancakes. So this is one that you really think about it. How exciting is making phone calls? Oh. And somehow they take a football movie and use the least dramatic, least interesting part of it in an action sense. Because there's very little football seen or played in this film because it's Draft Day. Draft Day is in April. It's in May. And, football is in September, October, November. So the fact that they are able to take making phone calls, conversations, rich guys walking up to a podium, and make that dramatic in a way that, you and I know this watching the draft on TV unfold, but how do you dramatize that and put it into a feature film? There's a little bit of a love element in there, too, but I think it's a little bit forced. Overall, though, really solid film. Number 3 for me is Draft Day. What did you think of Draft Day?
Say it, Tom. You get to save the city of Seattle with Bo Callahan. You know you want him, you pancake-eating mother. That was so great. I love the film. That was...
And David Putney.
Between that and The Express, I love Draft Day. You're right. They use all the personalities. Costner was great in the film. I love... my brain starts to leave me. He's such a great actor. The guy who played the owner, the English guy that played Dracula.
Alan
Frank Langella. Was the
Frank
owner of the Brown. Oh, everything about that film, because it was so true to path. And I used to cover the draft for AOL from 98 to 2000 at Madison Square Garden. It's like that. It's an S show. It's a shit show. And it's constant phone calls and deals going on in the last second. Now, what he did at the end of that film is very unrealistic. No one trades 3 times back into it. But, think of the young stars in that one. Tom Welling. Chadwick Boseman played Vontae Mack,
Yeah.
The one guy, I read an article about that movie in Variety and said that the star, can't think of the kid's name, is a young, good-looking blonde kid that played Bo Callahan. That was and of course, P. Diddy was his agent. But the kid, I don't remember the kid doing anything after that. But of course, you all know what Tom Welling's done up since then, and Chadwick Boseman went on to a great career. Did 42 after that, and the Black Panther. So these films, we could love these films, but it's good to see that there's a lineage that comes from these. I love Draft Day. I'm with you.
It's amazing too how good the casting is in all of these films that are on the top of our list. Especially, when you don't really think about it, but like the casting a film is difficult. Casting a team sport is so much more difficult because you have 11 players per team in football. You have 9 players for baseball. So anytime you have to cast that many actors early in their careers, that's never an easy thing to get it right. And, Chadwick Boseman as Vontae Mack nails it out of the ballpark, and he's done so many great roles in, sadly, such a short career, but, man, he made his time count on the screen for sure. So, Draft Day, my number 3 flick. Your number 2 movie, switch that over there. Your number 2 movie, classic, based a TV show off it, but the original feature film starred Billy Bob Thornton. Again, Texas high school football is the focus of this one. Tell me about Billy Bob Thornton in Friday Night Lights.
I almost had this as my number 1 because I remember Permian. I remember Midland, Texas. I remember going there, and it's a bunch of Dairy Queens and oil fields and black crows walking around dead grass, and there's this beautiful 40,000 seat stadium that you would love to have anywhere, because that's what high school football is like in Texas, especially West Texas. They could be the most dilapidated, rundown towns, and they got 35,000 seat stadiums that are state of the art. And it's about that team, that 1988 team that he took over. And there's a lot of pressure. It's true. You can't. It's like a college football program in Texas. If you lose 1 or 2 games, they put for sale signs on your lawn, and they have Sonny Mead is a great radio guy of West Texas football. They used him in the TV show, which, by the way, I binge watched all 5 seasons of Friday Night Lights, the TV version with Kyle Chandler, because it was brilliant. I don't want to get into that. I want to get into the movie. But again, Derek Luke playing Booby Miles, a young Derek Luke, great career. Everything. Tim McGraw to me stole the film, playing a really, really, mentally abusive father on his kid. The kid's name was Don Billingsley, the character's name. Garrick Hedlund, is that his name? It was the actor. He's done a lot since then too. And redemption. Everything's redemption in this whole thing. It's about he taking over this team and getting the quarterback. Lucas Black plays the quarterback. You've seen him in a million things before. And he's sort of like got to take care of his mother, who's mentally, has mental illness, and it's a true story. This guy's character, his name was Grimes. Gary Grimes is the name of the coach in real life. But Billy Bob Thornton hits it. I'm going to ask you that. You see him in so many different, everything this guy does, from the TV show Goliath to my favorite version of Billy Bob Thornton with Sling Blade, to this character where he plays a tough high school football coach with a heart, and he takes this team that he's never seen before, and he gets them to the state championship in Texas. And everything about that movie moved me.
And it's amazing that it was able to be based off of a real-life best-selling book that was then somehow adapted into a TV show. Very few pieces of media are able to be so successful in all 3 realms. Usually it's one or the other. Like even MASH, successful book, successful movie, yes, but I think everyone thinks of the TV show, and in this one, I think everyone thinks of all 3 in terms of Friday Night Lights. The fact that it was based on an actual high school, pretty amazing. And interesting, too, the fact that the leading lady, the wife of the football coach, is the same in the movie and the TV show. So no Gary Berghoff effect where it's radar involved, but she was great, too. Connie Britton. Phenomenal actress, and she's also the co-star in this one. And honestly, Billy Bob Thornton, I mean, come on. In his 40s, he got Angelina Jolie, so phenomenal actor in real life and on the football field.
H.G. Bissinger wrote the book. Read it. It's terrific. And Connie Britton has a very, very small role in the movie. Maybe 3 or 4 lines. In the TV show, she's all over the place. So you really see what kind of actress she is. And you're right. And then Brad Leland's the only character. Brad Leland plays Buddy Garrity in the TV show. Plays the same character in the movie. He's more lighthearted in the TV show, but he's brutal in the movie. It shows you, man. It shows you how. Well, he goes with the Billy Bob Thornton line is, you really need to win the championship. And he goes, what if I don't? He goes, well, you really need to win it. That's how brutal it is to win high school football in Texas and Ohio is more important than college football and pro football. Now, my wife's from Ohio, so I've lived that life and gone back there. I lived in Texas. High school football is huge to this day.
Well, you said it, 40,000 people for a high school football game. That's bigger than some Pac-12 stadiums, like Washington State. Martin Stadium is 35-ish thousand. UNLV used to play at the Silver Bowl at Sam Boyd Stadium. That's like 35,000. So the fact that high school football in Texas is that big, that it's 40,000 seats for a stadium, and it's phenomenal across the board and a great film. My number 2 is The Blind Side, and we've had recent articles about a controversial thing. I struggle to measure the impact of that versus the film, because one of the true feel-good stories The Blind Side is, it won Sandra Bullock a Academy Award. I still remember when The Blind Side came out, and whenever you have a biopic and a biography picture about someone's life, so many times details are changed to make things more dramatic. And so after watching The Blind Side, I was curious to see what was accurate and what was not. And I found a ton of different Reddit pages, Wikipedia pages, and a ton of those details were mentioned in The Blind Side. But it was stuff like, well, when they have the car accident, it's on this street and not that street. So the fact that if anything, details from the real life were changed for the film to make them less dramatic, tells just how unbelievable this story can be in a lot of aspects. Quentin Aaron as Michael Orr, Sandra Bullock won an Academy Award. The little kid as SJ did an amazing job in the role. So, feel good. And, sadly, there's the lawsuit or whatever it is going on now. I hope that gets resolved because, it's a feel good story that has a happy ending. Both Michael Orr and the Tui family are millionaires in real life, so I hope that thing gets resolved, because when you have when people open up their home, that's as giving and as vulnerable as you can make yourself to another human being. So if that really whatever it was, I hope they get that resolved in real life. The film it's feel good and it's formulaic in a lot of ways, but it all works. And the fact that it hews so close to reality, I think speaks to the, I don't want to say selflessness of it, because, the school got an NFL player out of the deal. But, again, anytime you can have a feel-good story that actually is relatively close to what actually happened, phenomenal. And Tim McGraw making another appearance on our list. The Concerned Father, but he doesn't try and, for being a country music star, he doesn't try and outshine Sandra Bullock in the film. So, and future superstar Lily Collins as the daughter, Collins Tui. No Emily in Paris jokes here, no berets in the film, but great film across the board. Blind Side, my number 2. Did you like The Blind Side?
Yes, I would have it in my top 5. This is why we do these podcasts. I mean, every time Michael Orr was interviewed with the Baltimore Ravens, he would decline comment on a lot of it. And I said, that's really strange. This is the top. This film's about your life, and now stuff is coming out that, the film itself, yes, but I thought it dragged on a little bit too long, and I knew the story, but there was always some acrimony between him and the family, and it carried on in the post, and I no one knows the real story, but the film, you're talking about the film was good. It dragged on too much for me.
Yeah, and there are some down spots in it, but I think it's less a football film and more of one about family and heart. And
you're right.
I think for whatever reason, we tend to be a little bit cynical in films in general. So the fact that it was able to bridge that gap and have a honest feeling of family, found families in this case, for Michael Lord. I hope, fingers crossed, that they're able to mend whatever fences from real life or superseding. But just the film itself is a very moving piece of reality / fiction, however you define a biopic. So, The Blind Side is my number 2 film. You're down to number 1 now. Your number 1 film is... This is one I have not seen to this day.
What?
Still. Well, it happened before I was born. I mean, it's old enough that James Caan was playing a football player, and Lando Calrissian was his friend. So tell me about Brian's Song.
True story. Billy D. Williams plays Gale Sayers. I'm sure you heard of him, Hall of Fame running back for the Chicago Bears, and James Caan, prior to playing Sonny Corleone, played a guy named Brian Piccolo. And the Chicago Bears, 1963 or 4, George Halas, the famous George Halas coach, Hall of Fame coach. And it's the first time, I'm into the segregation. It's the first time that a black guy and a white guy roomed together in the history of pro football. And here's Piccolo, a Southern kid that is absolutely a loose cannon, drinks beer, farts, belches, tries to get women in the room. And Billy D. Williams' character, Gale Sayers, is very conservative, a kid from Kansas, very Bible going, and they developed this bond through football. And Piccolo was not supposed to make the Bears, but he worked so hard, he made it. And he endeared himself to the team because he played special teams, and he was such a fun guy to be around. He took Gale Sayers' character, Billy D. Williams' character, Gale Sayers, out of his shell, and then another one. He gets leukemia, Brian Piccolo, and I don't know if there's a dry eye when you see the film when Billy D. Williams makes the speech, because everything was taken from context and Gale Sayers, to his deathbed, talked about what an impact that Brian Piccolo had on his life in the 2 years that he knew him, because his personality just delved into his and really brought out the demons that Gale Sayers had and made him a complete person. And just the saddest movie you ever see. It's about football because they take him right to the training camp, and it's a friendship about two guys from two totally different backgrounds, and goes to show you that humanity can work.
Absolutely, and it's funny too. Like, for anyone who is unfamiliar with either of the players, just go on YouTube and look after this podcast. After the live stream's over, go on YouTube and look up Gale Sayers' NFL highlights, and it is he was a phenomenal runner. And as far as two human beings at a time when a very unlikely friendship, the fact that they were able to bridge that gap and use sports as a bridge for a divide that was thankfully a lot bigger divide back then than it is now. Good to see in a film. And but when you see Billy D. Williams, do you see Gale Sayers or do you see Lando Calrissian?
I see back then. I see Gale Sayers. I mean, he just looked like him. Obviously, back then they didn't. They went to training camp. I heard James Caan, rest in peace, he died recently. The producers put us through a training camp. We got in football shape, and they actually use real Chicago Bears in the filming of this. And it was just a touching film. And it was just, I remember watching, I was 11 or 12 years old. I remember the story. I remember watching very few times you see your dad cry, and he was crying, because it was sad. Billy D. Williams gives a speech, and he does the same speech at Gale Sayers. I don't want to give it away. There's not a dry eye. And it's very touching film, and it won multiple Emmys. It was a TV film for ABC, the ABC Film of the Week. It wasn't a feature film. This is a TV film, one of the few TV films you'll ever see. Another one I saw that was like that, way out of the realm, was Boy in a Plastic Bubble with John Travolta when he first started out. It was a great TV movie that won multiple Emmys. Every once in a while, you get a TV movie that's right there with the. I'm asking you this. Have you ever seen a TV movie that kind of rated right up there with the motion picture?
No, usually they're on such a tight budget that you don't get a feature film's quality because it's less experienced actors and people. Television when you're producing a TV show, you got to do like 8 or 9 pages of dialogue a day. Feature films is usually 2 to 3. So even just from a pacing perspective, to have a film that has this sort of an impact on you, it's pretty amazing the quality of the work.
All right.
In this one, so that's great. Brent's song number 1 on your list. Number 1 on my list is sorry, cleared my throat a little bit. Got that raspy thing going on. My number 1 is based on a guy who used to live in Las Vegas for a while, but likes to charge for autographs. Before all of that, though, he was Rudy. This is about Rudy Rudiger. This is Sean Astin. Future, former Goonie and future guy to walk across Mordor and the Shire. In between, he played a very short football player, so consistency in Sean Astin's casting over the years. This is about a guy who walked on to the University of Notre Dame football team. It's a private school. He was deeply Catholic, and the fact that he's 5'0" and was able to get into a game at some point on a national championship contending football team with 5-star athletes and coaches concerned about the next step and the next title, all of the rings, all that kind of stuff. The fact that he was able to stick around and take all the hits and transcend sports in a certain way, but still be a football film. First and foremost, the love of football and the motivation for football. And, it's a guy who was able to graduate from Notre Dame, which is one of the toughest academic institutions in the Midwest. So, in addition to all that, we have future MCU, Marvel Cinematic Universe, basically co-founder in Jon Favreau as D-Bop. We have Vince Vaughn actually meeting Jon Favreau in this film, and it's just one of those films. It's a feel-good film. The cinematography is amazing. The football action is not the greatest in the world, but it does tell the dramatic story, and it does one of those really hard things in film in terms of telling a long period of time over years without having to result in too many montages. Left, right, and still be able to make it feel like one cohesive story being told, even though they are honest about how long it takes place over. So, Rudy, Rudiger, Sean Astin, my number 1 football film of all time. Did you like Rudy?
Nailed it. You nailed it. Y'all loved Rudy. I mean, another tear-jerking moment is when he's sitting. It's his last chance to get in. And he's sitting overlooking that pristine river that overlooks the Golden Dome, and he's reading the acceptance letter, and he starts crying. And then when he takes the letter and shows it. I can't look at. You asked me how I look at Lando Calrissian as Lando Calrissian. I can't look at Ned Beatty, who played Rudy's dad, without thinking the movie Deliverance. Squeal like a pig. And Ned Beatty's look. My son got to Notre Dame, and he's in the steel mill, and he's so excited and. Everything about that movie hit its mark. It was fantastic. And I don't know about you, Brian, but that's one of those movies I could watch when it comes on. If you're just swimming through channels and you're bored, and Rudy comes on, I just watch it. It's great, and really happened. They really cared. Here's a great little moniker in that. It's something you always look at, like what was Tim Robbins' first film? You talk about Vince Vaughn had a couple lines in that movie, and that was his first film. There's a scene in the locker room where Rudy's dressing up, and a guy walks up to him, walks right by him, and it's that number 3 on it. And you hear Rudy go, "Hey, Joe." Joe Montana was on that team. And he didn't start, but it was just because I remember Rudy, I saw him speak, and he goes, "Yeah, man, I was friends with Joe Montana. He didn't play because he wasn't a junior or senior yet." Little things like that I caught in the movie. And I didn't catch it until he said, in an interview that I saw him interview, and he said, that look I'm in the locker room, and guy number 3 comes by, a blonde guy, and he goes, hey Joe. It's just not Joe Montana the person in real life. It's Joe Montana playing. It's Joe Montana the football player, an actor playing him at Notre Dame. I love that film. Robert Prosky was great as his mentor, who was a preacher. And when Rudy says to him, he goes, "Father, can you do anything to get me into Notre Dame?" And he goes, "There's 2 things I've learned being a preacher. There is a God, and I am not him." That was such a great look on Rudy's face. I mean, I think the whole part of this is when you see films and you remember lines from the film. I have a lot of lines from Rudy. How about what was it? The guy that played the janitor.
Charles S. Dutton, who would be TV's Rock a few years later. He was the groundskeeper guy that kind of took I don't want to say pity, but took a mentoring role with young Rudy, and gave him opportunity and access to the stadium, and taught him how to be a groundskeeper as well. So yeah, he was amazing in that film, and I think in a very understated role, Charles S. Dutton really does shine as that character too.
To me, with D-Bot, Jon Favreau stole that movie. You look at him; he's a schlubby type of guy, and the kind of guy who can't get laid. And then he goes 3 years later, and he's the hot guy in Swingers, with Vince Vaughn. I've never seen an actor. I know we're getting off of. Have you ever seen an actor? Because you have such a great tact on film and acting and dragging movie guys where Fat Fish goes to get their reviews and your critique on actors. Have you ever seen a guy go from that to the Swingers Vince Vaughn to the Swingers Jon Favreau to the Jon Favreau and Made, another movie he did, and then he's that big schlub again in the movie Chef. He almost like he's a chameleon. He changes from skinny to fat overnight.
Well, he's able to do that while still maintaining an acting career and being one of the biggest directors in Hollywood. Sure. So he's so multifaceted in his talents. It's no wonder that he doesn't have the time to get to the gym every day. He's busy building the MCU, and currently he's helping build the Star Wars streaming series like Mandalorian, Ahsoka, all those streaming shows on Disney Plus. That's him behind that. So Jon Favreau is such a talented actor, and in front of the camera and behind the camera. And yeah, him as D-Bop is so funny in a relatively small role. And, you wonder, here's this big guy, gregarious personality, and he's hanging out with this tiny little 5'0" a literal hobbit in future years. He's hanging out with one of the Goonies. And, it doesn't really seem like a friendship that's particularly likely when you're talking about college-age kids. But, it's pretty amazing what Jon Favreau's able to do in that role.
Who played Rudy's girlfriend and she ends up banging his older brother? She had a nice career in Lily. What the hell's her name?
I have some of the cast here. Lily Taylor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
she's been around. She's been around a lot of stuff. So, let me ask you this: in all these movies we've talked about, for a critic, when we talk about films like Friday Night Lights and Remember the Titans and the Waterboy and Rudy, and you see the smaller cast members, and you see them are now big stars from these movies, is that a testament to the casting director, or the movie was that good and had so many eyes on it that someone said this could be a star?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, what do they say about directing? Directing is 90% casting. So, assuming that the director is involved in the casting process, which I think is probably different for every film, knowing the director knowing what that character is supposed to be, and the casting director knowing what the director wants, that relationship of figuring out who the right person is to play that role is such a critical thing to a film's success. It's amazing. Well, these are films that are on the top of our list for a reason. That means they got the casting right. If they get the casting wrong, they probably wouldn't be anywhere near the top of our list. So,
No.
So I think it's well, as they say, filmmaking is a collective art medium. So it's show business, but if you can get the show right, then the business takes care of itself, hopefully. And casting is definitely a huge part of that. So, Eric Snyder, Fish, thank you for coming on. I want to get you out on time here. So tell me a little bit, tell me one last time about the Fat Fish podcast and what people can expect and where they can see it and hear it.
Well, we go live every Monday, 10 o'clock Pacific, 1 o'clock Eastern time on Roku TV, DB TV, YouTube, Facebook. We're now on Podbean. Podbean is one of the biggest listening outlets you can get, Spotify. And we go live, and it's an entertainment and sports show. And you never know what you're going to hear coming out of our mouths. It's not great, but we try and have some good content for you. And Brad and I chop it up as just two guys in our 60s. Brad will find the greatest donut shop on the planet, and I'm trying to get him laid. That's about it.
Love it. And check out Fat Fish Podcast. And everyone, enjoy football. Football season's here. Football movies you can watch year-round, but football season is officially here. So thank you, everybody. And let me know down in the comments section of this video, what is your favorite football movie? Let us know in the comments section below the video. So I've been Dragon Movie Guy. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.